You're listening
to the CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast.
Hey there, and welcome to episode number 84 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, your host for the show, and on this episode, we're going to talk about strategic partnerships with your music. But before we do, I want to remind you that right now, you, the podcast listening audience, can get half off the price of CD Baby download cards. Yes, that's half off. Just call 503-595-3000 and give them the promo code DIY Podcast. And you've got to give them the code or you won't get the half off deal. And I'm hoping to be able to work more deals like this on behalf of our listening audience. So if you've been sitting on the fence about trying out download cards, be sure to take advantage of this deal, as it will probably only be available for a few more weeks. Well, we're going to get to the topic of the episode, and like I said, that is partnerships. And just so everyone understands what I mean by partnerships, I'm talking about a relationship between the artist and a company or organization that wants to use music in a way that enhances the products they promote. With all the doom and gloom about the music industry that's out there, the one big positive that usually gets drowned out by the doom and gloomers is that music consumption is at an all-time high, and companies and organizations love using music to leave a memorable impression on their clients. In this episode, you're going to hear from two different independent artists that used a strategic partnership to help move their music career forward. The first is Steve from the band Hullabaloo, and Lisa Lynne, who had an amazing partnership opportunity land in her lap after simply listing her album on CD Baby for sale. I hope these stories get your creative wheels spinning on new ways you can reach people with your music. So let's get started with my first interview with Steve from Hullabaloo. Well, joining me on the phone is Steve from the band Hullabaloo. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great.
Well, we're talking about partnerships on this episode of the podcast, and you emailed me your story, and it seemed like a really cool thing that happened with your music, and so I'm going to have you detail some of that. But before we start getting into those details, why don't you tell us a little bit about the kind of music you do and your band?
Well, I am in a kids music duo, and we call it free-range organic kid folk, and so it's kind of on the Americana side of children's music. And we've been together. I guess we just had our 6th anniversary, and we put out 5 CDs now, and play somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 or 300 shows a year.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're pretty busy, and I had a past life as a grown-up musician, and so I am even more thankful for the business and and the success, knowing how hard it comes.
Uh-huh. Well, you had emailed me about how you guys had hooked up with a company, and there was a partnership deal that you were working on. And I think when you emailed me, you didn't tell me the name of the company because it wasn't official yet, and you didn't want to ruin any chances.
Right,
so,
it is official, and the name of the company is Stroller Strides.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, which may not be a household name to everybody that's not in the kids music world or doesn't have kids, but they're a national company, I guess international. They're in Canada as well. And what they do is essentially fitness programs for moms with their kids, and they're usually outdoors. And so, they're doing exercise programs with kids. And for us, it was a real natural partnership because that's our exact demographic. Mm-hmm. And going a little more into our history with them, they're based in San Diego, and I am as well. And I've done a ton of shows for them. A lot of informal type of stuff where I'll go out and play for their classes just to get to know people and sell CDs and stuff like that. So we had a history going into all this.
Well, that's kind of interesting. So they're a company that they're not just producing products, but have actual like live events or classes, as you said?
Yeah. In fact, that's the majority of what they do is actual classes. Typically, they'll meet in parks or some are at the beach, some are in open air malls, that type of thing, where they can get together and exercise. They run and they do strength training classes and stuff like that. So it's more service oriented than it is selling products.
So when you started out hooking up with them, was it something where you're just like, hey, I'll come and play for your classes, or how did that come about?
Yeah, I suppose that deserves some explanation, and one of the reasons that I've been able to kind of get where I am now with Hullabaloo is that for a solid year, I would go anywhere and play for anybody. And in the kids' music world, that means preschools, schools, and just playgroups. It was kind of the kid version of house concerts, where generally stay-at-home parents will get together every Tuesday, and they'll just get together, and the moms can talk and the kids can play and stuff like that. And I offered it as a free thing. I'll come out and do a 30-minute show, and I'll have CDs for sale. And for the first year, I made a living just doing that. And that was back when I was doing like 350 shows a year, so I was running around like crazy, and it wasn't always great. I'd drive across the county and sell one CD sometimes, and other times I'd sell 40 or 50. So that was a mixed bag. But as part of that, I got to know the Stroller Strides, because they'd have after their classes, they'd have a little play group. And so it was an extension of those free shows that I was doing. They invited me to come out. And so I played virtually all of them in San Diego and some in surrounding counties. So I got to know them that way. And then as time went on and I developed a little bit more of a draw, I'd start to put on my own concerts. And I approached them to be like event sponsors. Mostly what we would do, we'd do an exchange. I'd have them out to the show, and they'd maybe do a 5-minute spiel before I played. And in exchange, they'd promote it to their local database of 5,000 or 10,000 people, which was great for us because we could get the word out, and great for them because they could, get in front of a crowd that was their exact demographic also.
Moving forward into like the partnership you described for me, how did that come about? Were they deciding to take their marketing efforts up a level?
Well, it was all me approaching them, and to back it up a little bit, I'll say that I'm an avid podcast listener, and I get a lot of ideas from you guys. And I was sitting.
We'll expect a commission check.
Yes, you got it. Check's in the mail. But it was the one where you guys were talking about releasing a holiday tune or two, and I'd kind of always meant to do that, never got around to it, and listening to your podcast, I'm like, all right, this year I'm just going to do it, and I hopped into the studio and just did guitar vocal versions of some Christmas songs, some Hanukkah songs, and some winter songs, and posted it on the internet for free, and just didn't expect anything of it. I wasn't charging any money. Wasn't even asking for email addresses. Just put it up there, and sent out an email to our database. And a couple bloggers picked up on it, and then a bunch of bloggers picked up on it, and the numbers went really crazy. We got something like 16,000 visits to the website.
Wow.
And, yeah, it was crazy to watch. I'd just sit there at my computer watching the numbers tick over. Like 18,000 plays and 8,000 full downloads of the thing. So here I was with this just accidental success and not really knowing what to do with it. And it felt good, just giving something away, and there's some fun to that. But in terms of making a living, that's a hard way to go. So I thought about it and realized that those are pretty significant numbers for in the online marketing world. And so I just approached Stroller Strides, and we'd had this relationship in the past, and I said, hey, these are the numbers we had with our holiday album. We're about to release a best of album, and fortunately, because I've got a relationship with them, I was able, I had the COO's email address, and she knew who I was, and she funneled my proposal off to the right person in the marketing department, and off it went.
Wow. So what I like about your story here is that you actually kind of did all the work and initiated the process. Where the other artist we're going to hear from in this episode of the podcast as well, it was the exact opposite. Where out of the blue, someone contacted her, so it'll be a nice balance to hear both sides. But so once they were interested in your proposal of having a partnership, what were some of the details that took place after that?
Yeah, originally we thought we might be able to get a little money, and in the proposal that was just enough to cover the expense of our publicist, sending out some emails. A couple $100, a very minimal, email blast. And so I threw that in there at first, and it looked like that might happen. And as it got higher and higher up the food chain, that got nixed. But what they offered was that they can shoot it out in their national email newsletter and their regional ones. And I don't know what their exact numbers are on those. I probably should have asked, but I didn't. But they have thousands of franchises around the country. So
okay.
It's a significant number in the tens of thousands.
So it's not just a San Diego.
No, not at all. It's national. And like I say, they've got a couple locations in Canada and stuff like that. So it was a big deal for us to have access to their folks. To be able to put our music in their hands while they're sitting at the computer. And like I said a couple of times now, that's our exact demographic. Kids in strollers, that's us.
Yeah.
And so so it's a perfect match for us. And in addition to those, they they're into the social networking stuff too. So they they did Facebook posts about it and Twitter and all that kind of stuff. So that was their end of the deal. All that we did was on the download site. We had a banner at the top that said, brought to you by Stroller Strides. And in the press releases and anything that we posted, we had an active link to the Stroller Strides website. And so in the end, it essentially became a zero-cost promotion for them. It cost us very little because we did spend a couple $100 on the publicist just to kind of give it a little nudge. And off it went. All
those details that you mentioned about what they said they would do, was that all written out in like a formal agreement? It
was very informal. And I think if I didn't know them personally and didn't know the company, I would have been leery. And had I not approached them, it was all me coming towards them with, hey, let's do this. And so I didn't press them on details on, how many posts are you going to do? How many, how many people will this go to? I suppose if I had anybody to answer to, any stakeholders, they'd probably want to know that sort of thing. But knowing the company, I know it's a significant thing to be exposed to their audience and quite frankly, to have their seal of approval. I know that they do sell some products online, and I know that they have deals where you can be a featured merchant and stuff like that. But they charge money for those things, and that's so to get that in trade for putting their name on our release was a big deal to me.
So, what were the results like in the end after the whole campaign was done?
Well, we're about halfway through it. So right now, the numbers are less than the Holiday album, and I haven't exactly figured out why, other than perhaps the Holiday album is more universal, and there's more need out there for that. But the numbers are about half right now, and we're about halfway through it. And I would say, as we get on, we're probably tapering off. So we'll probably, the numbers will probably be about 2/3 of what the Holiday album was, which for us is still great. At the moment we've got, we've got 7,000 visits and over 1,000 downloads. And with those, this time we asked for an email address. And frankly, that may be one of the differences, asking for that. even though it's free, I know you guys have discussed that on the podcast. You are asking for something when you ask for an email address, and that may be a barrier to some people. I don't know. But to us, that means, well over 1,000 new names on our email list, which is a big deal.
Especially because those are going to be, national, as opposed to some of the.
And they're going to be people that have downloaded our music, and we have enough confidence to think that they'll have liked it too. We'd like to think that anyway. And the timing is pretty good because we're working on a new album that will be ready in probably 2 or 3 months. So it's kind of a good stepping stone for that. So when it comes out, we can, we'll touch base with them beforehand one time. But when it comes out, we say, hey, we know you enjoyed the Best Of album. Here's the new thing.
Moving forward to a new album, is there any interest in this company sponsoring you guys in a deeper level than what you've done, or do you think?
I probably will chat with them about it. I don't think they're likely to, and it could just be a lack of confidence in me saying this, but I don't think they're likely to put up the kind of money that I would want. Mm-hmm. With the free download thing, it worked really well for us because it was a Best Of album. I didn't feel like we lost sales because we were giving it away for free, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Our fans already have those songs. And going through Stroller Strides in their context, it was all introducing to new people. With a new album, I think I'd hold the reins a little tighter and maybe want more compensation. And maybe that's a conversation we can have with them, and it's a good idea to try.
Mm-hmm. After going through this little partnership deal and initiating in a lot of it yourself, do you have any advice for other artists who might be trying to find ways to get their music out there and hadn't considered doing something like this?
Yeah, I would say, as I sit and read music business books and listen to your podcasts and stuff, I'm always trying to take what's out there and apply it to what I do. And there's probably tons of people out there saying, great, I don't sing for kids,
Yeah.
How's this going to apply to me? And I think the first most important step is to look at who your audience is and are there products or services that are directly correlated with them. I'm a Southern California guy, so I'm, familiar with like the action sports world, and a lot of styles of music are closely associated with the skate world or the surf world. And if you can find a company, if it's a lifestyle company, a clothing company, whatever it is, somebody who works closely with your same demographic, I think that's the most important thing. For us, it's a natural with Stroller Strides, and I would say that's the most important thing. Is just nail down who it is.
Yeah.
I see a lot of sponsorships with liquor companies and bar bands and stuff like that, and that's a natural. But if you think real long and hard and get creative, you might find a niche there. And work with smaller companies that they're excited to be associated with you.
Yeah, I agree. Because I think with the kids' music, I think a lot of people could say, oh, well, that's obvious, kids' music.
Right.
And I think, every demographic has some sort of companies trying to market to them. And every demographic has, music that fits those, like you said, lifestyle products and things like that. And it's just a matter of trying to find those connections. And for some people, it's going to be more obvious than others. And but I think there's still lots of opportunity there. And that's why I liked your story that you went out, you pursued it, and you made it happen in a company that, I'm sure other kids musician type people in San Diego never even thought of. And you're just like, hey, I'm going to do this. And while you were talking, there's a company here in the Portland area called Baby Boot Camp that sounds like a similar thing.
Yeah.
And
it sounds similar.
So it's all exercise for, women who've had babies and they push their kids around in strollers. So
yeah, absolutely.
So it's cool. It's just a matter of, thinking outside of the box and
Yeah,
figuring out.
and I think the sponsorship idea, it can be associated with an album release, or you can start smaller and just say, hey, let's work together on a show. Part of what I do is, I'll rent a theater or rent a community center or whatever and put on a show, and a lot of times for me, covering the cost of that is bringing on a sponsor or two, and and a lot of times they'll be local businesses. I've worked with Stroller Strides as more national business, but a lot of times, even just $50 or $100 to help me cover costs, or if you're have a good relationship with a club and you're a grown-up music band, to pad your pockets a little bit for the night. If you're drawing a crowd, think about who would like to be in front of your crowd.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that I like about your story is that it shows that you proved to them first that you had something to offer them.
Yeah, you're right. I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's an important thing. However you approach it, whatever type of deal, whether it's a download sponsorship or a club show or whatever it is, I think you got to come to them with something.
Yeah.
Whether it's a photo of you in front of a packed house, maybe that's enough.
Yeah.
Or the amount of people on your database, or
Yeah.
I think you've got to have something to offer them. We forget that most of the folks that we're dealing with, business is a portion of what we do when we're in the music business. But other folks, that's what they do. They want to see numbers,
yep.
And they want to be able to justify it to their boss or to the people they're working with.
Yeah. So the two things I take away that I think every artist listening to this should get is, one, that you built relationships first, and then two, that you proved to them that you had something to offer, and for them it was a natural fit. So because I know that people are going to just start spamming businesses saying, my band does this, you should. So I mean, yeah, that's a cool story, and I hope it continues to go well for you. It seems like there's lots of opportunity in that, and as there's lots of doom and gloom about the music business. I think these kind of deals are what is going to be the lifeblood of the industry moving forward, and especially for the indie artists, because they're so accessible in this area where a deal's quick, easy, and low maintenance compared to
and you're not signing away creative control or ownership or any of that. It's
or spending months haggling with lawyers. It's like, hey, let's do this. Okay, it's done. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, keep us posted on how it goes, Steve. And
I will.
If you have any other cool partnerships that come up in the future, I'd love to hear about it and hear the final results of how this went. And if any other thoughts or words of advice come to mind, feel free to share with us.
Good deal. Well, thanks very much, and I hope it inspires somebody out there to give it a shot on their own, and hope something good comes of it.
Thanks. We're only halfway through the episode. We've got one more interview, and that's with Lisa Lynne. So let's get to that interview. Well, joining me on the phone is Lisa Lynne. Lisa, how are you doing?
Great, thank you.
Well, as our listeners know, by this point in the show, we're talking about partnerships, and specifically, artists partnering with a business in a relationship that is mutually beneficial, where they get to use your music as a part of their promotion, and then you get access to all of the marketing that they're putting behind it. And your story was one of those. You called into the podcast line, and I actually had to re-listen to the message a couple times to make sure I got it straight, because you had quite a deal that came up. But before we get to those details, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as an artist, and then a little bit about the album that ended up hooking you up with this deal.
Well, I've been around for a while. In my earliest days, I actually started out as a heavy metal bass player, but I always loved Renaissance instruments, and I came across the harp and ended up creating this music based on the kind of chords and changes from my rock background. So I ended up, at the time, was to be in the New Age genre. So I started going independently with my own CDs and tapes, street performing, busking all around Venice Beach and such, and I sold quite a lot of those were cassette days, and ended up signing a deal over in Europe and did a couple things there, which sort of got away from me creatively. Came back and signed with Windham Hill, and so I got to experience some really big distribution and doing really fine shows, and it was at a whole other level altogether. But meanwhile, I always had my own little indie thing going from my early days at Venice and understood very well that big deals will come and go, but indie, you got to own your own stuff, you got to take care of it, and sort of by default, because I couldn't get a record deal at first, I had all this back catalog, and I've always been able to have an understanding of the retail market, selling on my own. I still do street performing along with much nicer gigs. I'm all over the gamut as far as the kind of gigs I do, but my catalog, my website, my mail order business is very strong. And because of that, I have always thought I didn't really need anything else. I've always had a healthy fan base that would buy every album I ever made all the time, and so I really cultivated that relationship with people. As time went on, I ended up becoming involved in music therapy, and with the harp, I would go in and play in hospitals and I ended up playing in the neonatal intensive care unit at Kaiser Hospital. I ended up starting a business that put acoustic music all in hospitals alongside my other business. So in that, I ended up wanting to make a CD recording just for the babies and the families I was playing for. Prior to that, I had been asked for a hospital to record 20 minutes of Brahms' Lullaby so they could hit a button whenever a baby was born, and the hospital would play that 20 seconds of Brahms' Lullaby. So I just did a little cute cosmic harp version like I always do. And they got so much response from that, the nurses, the patients. What was that? That was the most beautiful Brahms Lullaby. So I started thinking, that's very cool. So fast forward until I'm playing hospitals. I'm actually playing for babies in intensive care. So I learned all my favorite songs when I was little, and everyone wanted a recording of that song. So this is a far cry from my own albums, which are big, fat, acoustic, gigantic, instrumental, giant things, productions. I instead decided to use as much restraint as I could muster and just play the harp, the glockenspiel, little mandolin, and do these baby songs in sort of a cosmic way where I would stay true to the melody but leave a space, that I could do something special but always come back to the melody. So I made this album only as a gift that I was going to give for free to the hospital families with no other intention behind it, no intention to put it out officially or not even let anyone know I did this, because it was like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little tunes that I just didn't want to be known for. And I had some prior success. I'd always get my records at least in the Billboard Top 20 for New Age, and the highest I ever got was number 6. So I was still always trying at this other thing. And so I had also known about CD Baby, but I understood them to be a big help to people who didn't have distribution and were kind of more starting out. So I was very lax about putting my recordings on there. I had it on my to-do list for about 2 years. And, just sort of got around to it eventually. And I went ahead and put the Baby CD up there along with my other CDs, a few of them anyway. And then not only 2 weeks later, I got a call from a cosmetic company called Jafra. And they're like Avon. They sell creams and makeup and that sort of thing. It's like a home-based selling deal. And they said, we would like to place a large order from you. And I said, yes, of course. And I was thinking 100, more. And all this took place over a couple of weeks, and then they just dropped the number on me. It was $27,500.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, my God. I was just running around the house. Oh, my God. When you get that number, it is no longer a wholesale deal. So I have a ton of gift shops. They buy the CDs for $8 or $9 each. But for that quantity, it's no longer wholesale. It's a licensing deal, which I was sort of slipping into without realizing. What had happened with the CD was that since it was all just volunteer giving gifts, I found a pretty greeting card with flowers and a baby in the front and asked the artist if she would like to contribute, and she had given me donation to use this. But now I was going to sell 27,000 of them. I went back to her to say, I need to give you some money now because I sold a bunch. Meanwhile, while that was happening, they decided they were going to change the artwork to match it with all their Tender Moments gift line and basically just have a bald baby head on there. So I had to pull off my own artwork, which was a little bit hard to do, a compromise. And what was so interesting is when we were first sort of courting the deal, I realized that these were big boys. I was playing with the big boys, and at that time I was not represented. I didn't have backup. So they basically lured me in with all the nice love talk. This is the most beautiful album. Oh, it's so special. And then once I got in there, they just basically mowed me over with their big-time corporate thing, and I was alone.
So did you ever, at that point, go get yourself a lawyer to represent you in the process?
No, because it was sort of slowly dawning on me that I needed representation. But what did happen is I had one long-term manufacturer that I've been using for 15 years. He's always come through for me when I used to live in L.A. It was just fantastic. And he ended up helping me, guiding me through the whole thing and being able, because what we really need to make a contract for him. So he sort of worked the contract to be inadvertently through me, but between him and Jafra. Jafra would not do a contract with him, only me. So he was the one, the owner of the manufacturing company, who of course wanted the gig, who guided me and held my hand through the whole thing and just making sure all the T's were crossed. Had I known before what I was in for, I would have sought this, help. But he ended up being the savior and just helping me get it all straight and right. And also going out on a limb by printing and pressing and shipping before the check came. And in the end, I feel like we went through this whole thing, and then they sort of just got the discs and then disappeared. And I searched for the discs, and they're part of a gift basket for free, if they buy this gift basket. The one nice thing is that inside the CD there was a story about me playing harps in hospitals, and they kept that, which is really great, and they let me put my website on the CD. So it's only been out a short while. I'm hoping that, more will come of it from that.
Is a part of the deal, were they paying for the manufacturing of the CD, or were you having to come up with the CDs and then, like you said, a licensing deal where they would just...
Yeah, it was all in one. This is what they're paying. This is what they want delivered. So I immediately ran to my manufacturing guy. Here's a deal happening. So he was the one that went out on a limb. He went ahead and made and shipped them, and we called it net 30, to get paid, and they actually paid in like net 40 days, which was like, that's so hairy.
So they paid him directly and then paid you?
I tried to get it that way so I wouldn't show all the income, but they did not do it. They would only deal with me, and I tried for him. And he wanted to get future gigs with them, too, so he was all willing to set it up and make it easy and the tax number and all that such, and they wouldn't do it, only me. So they were I was learning one thing after another, that they were playing totally hardball. It wasn't like dealing with, the little New Age bookstore shop that I normally do. This was something I hadn't experienced before. And another interesting part was the royalty songs. There was like 16 little songs on the album. 4 of them I paid royalties on because they were copywritten. They were like Over the Rainbow, Wonderful World, AOY. Some tunes that I just knew I needed to be able to play live to sell the CD. Exactly, baby song. So I paid 9 cents a song. That's almost 40 cents a record. That's no joke, even when I was ordering my few thousands at a time for my shows. So after they gave me the number that they did, which by that time was around $2-ish, I said, but I think you need to keep these special songs on there, and they're 9 cents each. And they said, okay, we'd love to keep the special songs. But it was going to be my extra 9 cents per song. So I just went, oh my gosh. So time after time, everything I sort of tried, I just got mowed right over. It was so cut and dry. They got people, they got representatives, they got everything. And I felt like sort of a leaf in the mercy of the river, And so we ended up going back and forth a few times. And I had said, well, how about the 2 songs? And they said, okay, we'll keep the 2. I said, these 2 songs at least are very important for the album. This was before I knew I was paying for them. So they said, sure, we'll keep the 2 songs. So it ended up costing me an additional 18 cents for those songs. And then after I realized that, I tried to talk them out of the 2 songs, and they said, no way. And the whole time I had the sense of, like, if I didn't play it right, they just move right on to the next person. So I was a little bit on eggshells. And eventually, it took months. There were setbacks. Eventually, it finally all happened. And it was so sure of a thing that I even went and got with my mom a house. And we were literally signing the papers, waiting for their check to come at the very last second. It was so hairy, and everything took so long, and there were so many details. I was just sweating it big time right to the end. And finally they paid, and it was all great. But it was quite an experience.
When you were working the deal, you mentioned that you got the sense that they would move on. Was there ever a point where you thought that was going to happen or be a possibility, or did it go pretty smoothly, but you just felt like you couldn't throw a wrench in anything because if you did, the deal would probably fall through?
It was going pretty smoothly, and it was just a matter of, because they were a little bit more sketchy about returning my emails. You know, when they needed something from me, I'd drop everything and do it. But on the other side of it, it would be 2 weeks would go by before a quick, question was answered. So during that time, you'd start pacing around thinking, oh, I shouldn't have done this, when in fact they were just busy and nice as can be, but just, it's just, you're at a disadvantage when you're the one waiting,
You mentioned that it's just been out for a little bit and you haven't seen a whole lot of return besides the money that they paid you. Do you expect that you'll see some growth in your fan base because of the partnership, or basically just I got paid and let's move on?
Well, that remains to be seen. I mean, the music isn't really representing what I do. So, and the fan base are basically still in crypts, but that's looking towards the future. It's just a strong product for me on my normal sales table alongside from my others. So I don't have really high expectations, except maybe people will be interested in the hospital program that I want to do and may help me to branch out doing that. But so far, I mean, I'm always getting a steady sign up on my Twitter and Facebook and all that too, so I never really quite know where it comes from. But no major jump has happened, but it's a steady flow. But it could be from all my other stuff, too.
Next time around, if this happens again, what are you going to do differently?
I'm going to first seek professional counsel and actually have them do the deal and the email for me, and just report back to me what's happening so I can be buffered from the stress of it. And I'm usually a very relaxed person, but towards the end there I was actually very stressed out. And so I would just basically have a buffer, figure out what it's worth it to them to negotiate this for me, and maybe they can even negotiate a better situation for me so I don't get so easily mowed over by a few cents. They're an enormous company. They should have paid for those songs, not me. But I would just immediately go put a lot of energy into finding someone who could cancel me from beginning to end and be the spokesperson for me, because I've always, had that in the past, and this was my first time alone, and I felt a little bit unprepared.
Have you thought about pitching this album to any other companies?
Yes, I started making, there's 2 hospitals that order from them regularly, and they give it to every single baby born in there. So they buy them for me at a much higher price, closer to wholesale. They have about 200 babies a month at Kaiser Panorama City, and they give every family a CD as they leave. So I got the idea to get some more hospitals to do that as well. So this is a niche market never even thought of before. So I sent out a letter to a bunch of hospitals, and I got very little response. They're all too busy. They're understaffed. So the next thing is I'm just doing all these gift shops and different things. So I've been getting enough nibbles on it, but there's so many other things going on that I just am anxious to move on to my new music coming out. And, if it comes, it comes. It's already sort of had its day in the sun. And I purposely didn't date the album so that it would be timeless. So anytime I feel like it, I could hire someone to just make me a list of all the retailers and distributors and wholesalers. That's an effective thing that I know it will work, but a lot of other ideas will also work too. So it's a matter of how I decide to spend my time every day. Couldn't it be more valuable composing in the studio than chasing net 30 from retailers? So,
yeah, exactly.
That's always a decision of how valuable your time is. It'll work if I did this list, but do I want to go chasing around these individual retailers all the time? That's not really fun.
When you were first playing at the hospital, who was the person that became the contact? Like, what position did they have at the hospital that actually decided, yes, we're going to buy these albums and start giving them to every new baby born? It was the manager of the neonatal care unit, and I would just be in there playing, and they loved the music. I'd come every week, and they paid me to play every week, too. This was a whole other company I did just for playing in hospitals, and they pay. Mainstream hospitals will pay if you come in it right. And so it was just
someone I knew who was in charge of kind of nursing there, and so I think they just put it to whatever ideas they have. So they order consistently year-round, and they're very late with their checks, and I always ask.
Well, it's definitely an interesting story, and I know that it'll make the bosses here at CD Baby happy to know that it all happened because you put the album on CD Baby. They found you.
Definitely the Cinderella story ever for TV. So now I'm preaching the holy praises of it to everybody I know. Just put it out there. It's a wonderful thing. I love your podcast. I listen to every single one, and I think it's just super rich, really high quality. I think you do such a great job.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and thank you for taking time out of your day to share some of your story with us. And
well, thank you again so much.
Thanks again to both Steve from Hullabaloo and Lisa Lynne for coming on the podcast and sharing their stories with us. If you'd like to comment, or if you have any thoughts or would like to comment on this episode, feel free to do so. There's several ways in which you can comment. First is at the comment section at cdbabypodcast.com. Each episode underneath the show notes has a place where you can leave your thoughts and comments and weigh in on the topic. You can also call our listener line at 206-426-5683. We love getting your recorded messages and playing them on the show, so feel free to weigh in that way as well. And we take email at info@cdbabypodcast.com. And I think that's going to do it for this episode, so we'll catch you next time. You've been listening to the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast, broadcasting from Portland, Oregon, USA.